I never thought I'd be the person writing something like this, pouring my shame and hurt into the internet, but here we are. I'm 38, married for 12 years to someone I loved more than anything, and until a few months ago, life felt normal. Routine, maybe boring, but normal. I have a stable job, a house we bought together, and 2 kids under 10 who are the center of my world. We laughed, we fought about little things, but I never imagined anything like betrayal. It started subtly, months ago, with small changes I tried to ignore. She started drinking coffee 3 times a day, which I know sounds ridiculous, but it was out of character. She's never been a coffee person. She'd say it's work stress, the long hours. I just need a pick-me-up. And I nodded, thinking maybe I was being paranoid. I know the signs of paranoia, having dealt with anxiety myself, so I tried to chalk it up to that. Then came the little absences, mornings when she said she was running errands, evenings when she needed some space. I trusted her. I trusted us. And when the first tiny seed of doubt hit, I pushed it down. I didn't want to think about it. I didn't want to imagine what the truth might be. But some instincts don't lie, and mine was screaming at me, though I tried to stay calm, rational, normal. I remember the exact morning it really hit me. I was making breakfast when I noticed she wasn't in the kitchen. Her purse was still there, but her keys and phone were missing. That's when I noticed her laptop open on the counter. I didn't snoop, at least not intentionally. I was making pancakes. But a message popped up, just a tiny notification. I didn't even recognize the name. "Can't wait to see you later, winky face." Something in my chest tightened. My hands shook slightly as I grabbed her phone from the living room table, telling myself I wasn't going to invade her privacy. But there it was, a chain of texts, flirty, intimate, something I never thought I'd read from the woman I married. "Miss you already, you looked amazing today, I hate waiting for our coffee mornings." It wasn't just friendly. Not even close. My mind spun. I wanted to throw the phone, scream, leave the house. But I stayed frozen. Part of me couldn't believe it. I read the messages over and over, each time feeling a heavier, colder weight settling in my stomach. The woman I'd shared a bed with for over a decade was smiling at someone else in the morning light. And the worst part? It wasn't just anyone. It was the barista at the coffee shop down the street, the same shop she'd suddenly been obsessed with. It all clicked then. The coffee obsession, the little absences, the just errands, lies. But even with all the evidence, part of me kept hoping it wasn't real. Maybe it was a joke. Maybe it was nothing. But deep down, I knew the truth. And that truth would destroy everything. I confronted her that evening. I remember standing in the kitchen, phone in hand, trying to find words that didn't make me sound insane. "Who's this?" I asked, voice shaking. She looked up from stirring a mug of coffee, her third that morning, and froze. For a second, it was like she didn't know what I meant. Then her eyes filled with guilt. I can explain," she whispered. And that's when the floodgates opened. She admitted it. The barista. It started months ago. "It was just coffee at first," she said, casual as if it didn't matter. But soon it wasn't just coffee. The mornings at the cafe weren't just a pick-me-up, they were dates. Texts. Secrets. Every excuse, every little lie, suddenly made sense. I couldn't move. I felt like my body wasn't mine. The words kept hitting me in waves. "I didn't mean to hurt you," she said. "I didn't know it would get this far." But it did. It had gone so far. And I wanted to scream, but all that came out was a hollow. "How long?" "Since last October," she admitted. My brain refused to process it at first. I kept asking questions, but each answer was worse than the last. I kept seeing our life in fragments, moments I thought were normal, smiles I thought were genuine, now all tainted. The night after the revelation, I couldn't sleep. I sat on the couch while she lay in the bedroom, pretending I wasn't awake. I kept replaying the texts, her words, her face. How could she do this? How could I have been so blind? I felt stupid, gullible, used. And worst of all, I felt angry at myself for still loving her. The kids didn't know. They still thought we were normal. And I couldn't let them see the chaos eating me alive. I played the role of calm parent, but inside I was a storm. Every time I heard her laugh or make a casual comment about coffee, my chest ached. Every morning I poured my own coffee, a ritual we shared. I felt like I was participating in the betrayal. I tried to talk to friends, but it's impossible to explain without sounding weak or pathetic. She cheated with the barista? They asked, some trying to be supportive, some clearly judging. I didn't care. I didn't want their advice. I just wanted the pain to stop, to rewind, to take back the moment I saw those texts. But you can't unsee it. You can't unfeel it. I spent hours imagining confrontations, imagining leaving, imagining forgiveness. Each scenario tore me apart in a new way. And that's when I realized, life as I knew it was gone, and there was no going back. The next morning, I couldn't hold it in any longer. I cornered her in the living room while the kids were at school. We need to talk. Now. My voice was low, but every word felt heavy, loaded with years of trust crumbling in seconds. She didn't try to run this time, she just nodded, pale, avoiding my gaze. I asked the questions I needed answers to, each one tearing a little more of my soul out. How often? Where? Did you? She answered in fragments, stuttering, apologizing between each confession. I could feel my heartbeat in my ears, my stomach twisting into knots I didn't know existed. Her tone was full of regret, but regret doesn't erase betrayal. Not when someone else has been sharing what should have been ours. She tried to justify it. It wasn't about you. I was stressed. I needed attention. The words were sharp and cold in my ears. Attention. Not love. Not care. Just attention. And I wanted to hit her, scream, collapse. Instead, I sat there in stunned silence while she cried, while I tried to breathe through the betrayal. She begged me to understand, to forgive. And I hated myself for listening, for even considering it. I wanted to walk out. I wanted to pack a bag and never look back. But part of me couldn't leave, couldn't give up the life we built, couldn't abandon the family we had together. I realized that love doesn't vanish overnight, even when it's being used as a weapon. In the days that followed, everything felt surreal. I went through our home like a stranger, noticing little signs I'd ignored, coffee cups in odd places, receipts for cafes I'd never heard of, phone notifications she'd brushed off. Every little detail was now a dagger. I felt paranoid, suspicious, angry. Every interaction with her was a test, every smile a potential lie. I started having panic attacks, waking up drenched in sweat, convinced she'd run back to him. I caught myself checking her phone when she wasn't around, something I swore I'd never do. Guilt and betrayal waged war in me. I felt like a shadow of myself. The person I used to be, confident, steady, trusting, was gone. Replaced by someone fragile, jittery, constantly replaying the past. Even mundane things, like making breakfast or walking past the cafe near our house, triggered memories I couldn't escape. I hated the barista for existing. I hated coffee for being a symbol of betrayal. And I hated myself for letting her in my life so completely, for not seeing the cracks, for believing love could shield me from this kind of pain. And yet, through all the rage and heartbreak, part of me still loved her. And that, I think, is the cruelest part. Loving someone who destroyed you, who's shared your life with another person, is a kind of torture you can't describe, only feel. The kids didn't know, and I fought to keep it that way. But hiding it made me feel like a different person around them. I'd sit at the breakfast table, smiling through the panic, asking about school, while my mind screamed, replaying her texts, her excuses, her laughter with someone else. Every good morning felt like a lie, and every hug a reminder that I couldn't trust even the smallest things anymore. Even small routines became unbearable. Grocery shopping felt like walking through a maze of reminders. Her favorite snack, the cafe she always went to, little things that seemed harmless before, now like symbols of a life she'd shared with someone else. I began to question everything I'd taken for granted. Was she ever truly happy with me? Did she even love me? Every memory was tainted, and I couldn't separate truth from illusion anymore. We tried talking, sometimes civilly, sometimes screaming. I asked her why, and the answer was always vague. I was lonely, I didn't feel seen, I made a mistake. Mistake. That word rang in my ears. A mistake is spilling coffee. Cheating on your spouse is a choice, deliberate, repeated, a betrayal of everything we built. And yet she spoke with tears, and I kept hoping she'd somehow reach the part of her that loved me still. But love doesn't erase the damage. And I started realizing the quiet, insidious effect it was having on me: anxiety, sleepless nights, constant self-doubt. I wasn't just heartbroken, I was unraveling, and no one could fix that for me. One night, we argued in the living room, doors closed, voices raised, the kind of fight that leaves your chest sore and your hands shaking. She kept saying, "I don't want to lose you. I love you." I wanted to believe her, I really did. But the words didn't match reality. Love isn't secret texts, hidden meetings, or stolen mornings. Love is loyalty. Love is honesty. And I didn't feel any of that anymore. I told her I didn't know if I could forgive her. She cried, begged, pleaded. "We can fix this," she said. "We can work through it." And I wanted to want that. I wanted to be the person who forgives, who rebuilds trust. But the thought of her with someone else, smiling, sharing coffee, sharing moments that should have been mine, made my stomach twist in a way I couldn't endure. Sleep became impossible. I walked through the house in a daze, hearing my own thoughts scream louder than anything she could say. I questioned myself constantly. Did I miss signs? Did I drive her away? Could I have prevented this somehow? Rationally, I knew it wasn't my fault. But emotionally, guilt clawed at me every day. And still, I loved her. Still, I feared losing the family we built. And still, I hated myself for feeling so broken. The worst part? I wasn't even sure who I was anymore, just a man trapped between love and betrayal, teetering on the edge of losing everything. Eventually, I couldn't avoid it anymore. I had to see him. Not in a violent way, I'm not proud of this, but I needed closure, some way to face the reality she'd created. One Saturday, I went to the cafe near our house. He was there, smiling behind the counter, unaware, probably thinking his relationship was harmless, cute, innocent. I don't even remember what I said at first. Something blunt. Something that made him freeze. His eyes widened when he realized who I was, and for a second I saw fear, the first time I felt anything besides my own pain. I told him what he did. I told him how it destroyed my life. He stammered, tried to justify it, said things like, "I didn't know she was serious," or, "It wasn't meant to hurt anyone." But I'd read the texts. I knew the lies. I knew it wasn't an accident. Walking out of that cafe, I felt nothing. Relief? Anger? I'm not sure. I just knew that seeing him didn't change anything. The damage was done. And I had to face it at home, every morning, in every routine, with her, with our children, with a life that no longer felt mine. Life at home became tense and fragile. I tried to go back to normal, pretend the world hadn't shifted beneath my feet. But every little interaction reminded me that things were broken. She'd glance at her phone, laugh at a notification, or make a casual comment about coffee, and I'd feel my chest tighten. My trust was gone, and every day, I had to pretend it wasn't. I started avoiding intimacy. Not just physical, but emotional. I couldn't open up without the memories of betrayal creeping in. Conversations became tests. Every word, every gesture was analyzed. And she noticed. She tried to fix it, to comfort me, to be patient. But patience can only stretch so far before resentment takes over. And I resented her. For what she did. For how she made me feel. For taking the life we had and tainting it with someone else. I also resented myself. For staying. For caring. For letting myself love someone who could hurt me this badly. I'd always thought love was strong enough to overcome mistakes. But this wasn't a mistake. It was a choice, repeated, deliberate. And the weight of that choice pressed on me every day. I didn't know if we'd survive. And honestly, some mornings I wished we wouldn't. Just so the pain could end. We tried counseling. I wanted to believe it could help, that maybe there was a way back from the wreckage. She cried in every session. She apologized endlessly, saying she'd do anything to repair what she'd broken. And I listened. I nodded. I even spoke. But inside I felt hollow. Every session was exhausting. I had to articulate my pain over and over, while she tried to justify, rationalize, explain herself. I didn't know it was hurting you this much, she said once, and I almost laughed out of disbelief. Did she really think her secret romance hadn't caused irreparable damage? Did she think guilt could erase betrayal? I wanted to scream, it's not just coffee. It's everything we had. Everything we trusted. Even outside counseling, the tension lingered like a shadow. Dinner conversations were muted. Laughter felt forced. I caught myself imagining a life without her, without the constant reminder of betrayal. And yet I couldn't make that move. Leaving meant disrupting the kids, admitting that 12 years of my life had been partially stolen, and facing the shame of being the husband who couldn't hold it together. Some days I'd watch her with the kids and feel pangs of love. Real love. Genuine. But it was tangled with disgust, disappointment, fear, and bitterness. I didn't recognize myself anymore. The man who trusted blindly, who laughed easily, who loved openly, he was gone. I began sleeping in the guest room. Not fully, but enough to escape the closeness that now felt dangerous. Physical touch became unbearable. Even a casual hand on my shoulder made my stomach twist. And she noticed. She tried to reassure me, said she'd wait, that she'd be patient. But I could see the hurt in her eyes. I was hurting her too. And that guilt, layered on top of everything else, became another weight I carried. My anxiety worsened. Every time she left the house, I wondered if she was texting him. Every time she smiled at a notification, I imagined it was from him. I became obsessive, hyper-aware, mistrusting. And ironically, the more I tried to protect myself emotionally, the further apart we drifted. I felt trapped in a life that was both familiar and alien. I couldn't go back to how things were. I couldn't go forward either. The middle, limbo, became home. I lived in constant tension, afraid to trust, afraid to leave, afraid to feel anything at all. And yet, the love didn't fully vanish. It lingered like a wound that refuses to heal, painful but persistent. It made every decision, every thought, every small daily interaction unbearable. Loving her had become both my curse and my chain. Eventually, we reached a breaking point. One night, after another argument that left both of us in tears, I said the words I'd been avoiding for months. Maybe we can't fix this. The silence that followed was deafening. She stared at me like I'd stabbed her, her hands trembling. I wanted to take it back immediately, wanted to apologize, wanted to beg her to stay. But the truth had been sitting between us for too long. We tried one last desperate attempt at reconciliation. For a few weeks, things felt almost normal. We forced ourselves to laugh, to hold hands, to share small moments. But it was hollow. Every laugh was a reminder of trust broken. Every glance at her phone made my heart race. I realized I was pretending to survive in someone else's world, one I could no longer believe in. The children didn't know the full story, and I hated that part of it too. I wanted to protect them, but I also knew I was failing them. My own emotions were so raw, so tangled, that I couldn't even process my anger or sadness properly. My identity, husband, father, partner, felt fractured. I was still a parent, but I was no longer the same man my kids thought I was. By the end, we had to make the painful decision: separation. It wasn't explosive, but it was definitive. No more pretending, no more fragile reconciliation. Just space, silence, and the reality that our life together, the marriage I'd loved so deeply, was over. After the separation, the weight didn't lift. Mornings felt empty. Coffee, once a shared ritual, became a bitter reminder of what I'd lost. Even now, months later, I feel the pull of what was: the comfort, the shared jokes, the family dinners, alongside the sting of betrayal. I wrestle with guilt for leaving, even though I know I had no choice, and with resentment for what she did. Trust, once broken, doesn't come back easily. I catch myself overanalyzing every relationship, every interaction. I fear vulnerability. I fear intimacy. I fear that loving someone means opening myself to betrayal again. And part of me fears that I'll never fully recover. At the same time, I've started reclaiming myself. Therapy, long walks, journaling, small steps toward understanding who I am without her in the center of my life. I still love, still feel deeply, but I guard my heart more carefully. If there's one lesson I've painfully learned, it's that love and trust are fragile. And while betrayal can shatter everything, the process of healing, messy, slow, heartbreaking, is the only way to survive. I may never forget her, or the coffee that started it all, but I'm learning to live again. After the separation, the weight didn't lift. Mornings felt empty. Coffee, once a shared ritual, became a bitter reminder of what I'd lost. Even now, months later, I feel the pull of what was: the comfort, the shared jokes, the family dinners, alongside the sting of betrayal. I wrestle with guilt for leaving, even though I know I had no choice, and with resentment for what she did. Trust, once broken, doesn't come back easily. I catch myself overanalyzing every relationship, every interaction. I fear vulnerability. I fear intimacy. I fear that loving someone means opening myself to betrayal again. And part of me fears that I'll never fully recover. At the same time, I've started reclaiming myself. Therapy, long walks, journaling, small steps toward understanding who I am without her in the center of my life. I still love, still feel deeply, but I guard my heart more carefully. If there's one lesson I've painfully learned, it's that love and trust are fragile. And while betrayal can shatter everything, the process of healing, messy, slow, heartbreaking, is the only way to survive. I may never forget her, or the coffee that started it all, but I'm learning to live again. Even now, I catch myself thinking about her. Not in the longing way, not exactly. It's more like a dull ache that never fully goes away. Sometimes I wonder if she regrets it, if she thinks about the life she tore apart. I don't know, and maybe I'll never know. Part of me wishes I did, because closure is supposed to ease pain. But in reality, some wounds aren't meant to fully close, they just become part of who you are. I've learned that love can coexist with betrayal. You can love someone with every fiber of yourself, and still be completely destroyed by them. You can care for a family, a home, a life, and still have it crumble in a way that leaves permanent cracks. I also learned how fragile trust really is, and how devastating it can be when it breaks. If there's advice I'd give, it's not about revenge or anger. It's about awareness and boundaries. Pay attention to the little things. Trust your instincts. And know that love without respect and honesty isn't love at all, it's just an illusion. Sometimes I feel guilty for surviving, for moving forward, for rebuilding parts of myself while what we had lies in ruins. Other times I feel grateful, because life hasn't completely stopped for me, even if a chapter ended in fire. Pain is unavoidable, but it shapes you, teaches you, forces you to see yourself clearly. I'm not fully healed, probably never will be, but I'm learning to live again, cautiously, painfully, but honestly. And maybe that's all I can ask for now, a chance to be whole again, one careful, wary step at a time.